If you clicked on this video, there's a chance you've never really reflected on why you like collecting Pokemon cards, because the reality is we are all purchasing overpriced cardboard that doesn't really provide any value outside of personal fulfillment. Though, have you ever actually stopped and wondered, why do I bother spending innumerable amounts of money which effectively provides zero value besides some level of enjoyment? In fact, we actually see so many complaints about the pricing of the PS5 Pro at $700 US, or the sheer amount of pitchforks that have come out with the Nintendo Switch 2 announcement, and the wild price increases of games as well, though some of the top chase cards equal these prices and the same energy of anger just isn't there. In fact, you could probably argue that spending the same amount of money on a Nintendo Switch 2 is actually a more logical purchase. You're getting hundreds, maybe even thousands of hours of entertainment, plus a physical piece of hardware packed with electronics, a screen, and materials that actually justify the cost. Meanwhile, with Pokemon cards, you're just getting rare cards that don't really have any justification for the price, and yet a lot of us still choose the cards. That's why within this video, I'm actually diving into the real reasons we love collecting Pokemon cards, touching on the psychology behind collectibles, how nostalgia can actually drive us to chase feelings that we thought were long gone, and why something that looks like nothing more than cardboard can sometimes be worth more than the latest cutting edge technology. And also, we'll be covering some strategies on the best way to complete master sets rather than ripping packs later on in this video as well. Though, you know, a little bit of my own story, right? Pokemon was arguably one of the most important games of my childhood. I mean, I still have vivid memories of playing Pokemon Gold on repeat, and even the music from the game still draws in so many memories from the past, and it just takes me back. Truth be told, right, collecting, playing, and watching Pokemon was one of the most important aspects of my childhood, as I was like an overweight kid, right? And I was a bit insecure about my weight, though, you know, collecting Pokemon and playing a lot of the games actually helped me escape to a world of my own. Though, you know, over the last year and a half of having this channel and surpassing 50,000 subscribers, I've actually learned a lot, right? And one thing that's really stood out to me was, hey, it's not just me who had these experiences with Pokemon. In fact, a whole generation of people share the same feelings, and this is now still playing out with a lot of us in real time. And Pokemon just has this strange way to stay in our memories, which is like nothing we've ever seen before. But funnily enough, we actually have some science to prove this, right? In fact, a 2019 study from Stanford University, which was published in Nature Human Behavior, looked into this. It was titled "Extensive Childhood Experience with Pokemon Suggests Eccentricity Drives Organization of the Visual Cortex." Or if you'd like the simplified version, playing lots of Pokemon as a kid can actually change how your brain sees and organizes the world. So this study is really interesting, right? And I actually feel it's a massive reason why we all enjoy Pokemon so much today. The study found many adults today who played a lot of Pokemon games as children showed distinct activation in a part of the brain that helps recognize familiar faces or animals. So what this study actually found was that this early repeated visual exposure literally rewires the brain to carve out a Pokemon specific region. So all those games that we played as kids, all the collecting, all the anime actually made this specific region in our brain. So Pokemon and collecting for a lot of us extends past simple nostalgia. It's actually far more than just an emotional factor. For a lot of us, it's neurological, right? And maybe that's why we have such distinct emotional connections to both Pokemon games and Pokemon cards. So, you know, that's actually why when we actually collect Pokemon cards in adulthood or play the games, it literally lights up a part of our brain that was formed when we were kids. That's why logic can sometimes leave the door, because not many other areas of life can actually compete with that. And I actually think that's the reason why Pokemon is literally so powerful. And it seems no matter how old you become, there's always this slight association or comfort with Pokemon. And I think that's because how powerful these established connections are, and the fact that these were built when we were in our most innocent years. And I actually feel this is really important to grasp, because when you feel like you're spending a lot on Pokemon cards, or you cannot really make sense why filling a binder gives you this satisfaction and people are confused or don't understand, it's something that you kind of need to understand, because when you feel like you're spending too much on cards, it's literally tapping into how your brain was wired as a kid. Those childhood associations, they're very powerful. And that's why it's important that I share this message with you and all my broader audience, because I feel like if you are overspending on cards, or sometimes you're a bit confused why you like the card so much, it helps to understand a lot of this, because a lot of the way we make sense of life or behaviors that we do is because what we experience in our childhood, right? Like, if I can actually be real with all of you, something I really struggle with is overeating when I'm stressed. And that's because food was such a comfort for me as a kid, right? I mean, I grew up in an Eastern European family, and food was like a way that we connected and bonded, right? And no matter how hard life got, we always could connect over a meal, some warm tea, maybe some cake with the family, right? Though, you know what was really interesting? I always felt no matter how hard life got, I had my family. And also the comfort of eating made me kind of like decompress, and it just gave me this sense of safety. Though as I've gotten older, this safety net that I kind of established as a kid has become somewhat of a coping mechanism for me, right? So what happens now in my adulthood when I'm stressed, or maybe I have a video deadline to make, or like, sponsorship deadlines, or, Chanel needs some help and I feel like I'm not dealing with my stress well, what do? I overeat. However, what's really cool is that I actually know I'm not alone with a lot of these things, right? And that's why I actually wanted to share something that genuinely helps me, a platform called strawberry.me. Now, if you have been watching the channel for a while, you'll know that I'm all about helping my viewers level up, and I never really hide anything I've gone through in my life, because I think it's really important that my viewers get a really, genuine and real perspective on who I am. That's why I actually think it's really cool for you to check out today's video sponsor, which is strawberry.me, a platform I'm genuinely proud to partner with because they're doing real work to support people on their unique journeys. So strawberry.me is an online platform that connects people with personal and career coaches. And I actually went through their onboarding quiz to pair me with the best coach. So when you go on strawberry.me, they start with a questionnaire that helps identify your goals, identify your challenges, and what you're really looking for. Now, while working with my coach, we actually uncovered that a big source of my stress comes from not having a clear boundary between work and rest. Without that separation, the pressure from work would spill over into my downtime, and that's when I'd feel the urge to overeat. So my coach actually helped me implement strategies to create a clear transition between the two. So what we actually figured out was, after work, do a ritual that reinforces the workday ended, like taking a long walk, going to gym, or having a shower. So if you do feel stuck in old habits, or you're doubting your abilities, strawberry.me coaching can actually help you break free from these challenges and unlock your full potential. Scan the QR code or visit strawberry.me/Phillips Collectibles to start coaching with a $50 credit. Honestly, you'll never regret investing in yourself. All the details for strawberry.me can be found within the description of this video. Though, as I was mentioning earlier, right, collecting is comforting for a lot of us. And I remember when Chanel would sometimes see me organizing my binders or flicking through some of my cards, she'd always sit there and smile and be like, "Why on earth do you enjoy this so much?" And there was like this bit of confusion on her end. And while she was a little bit confused, like, why does he like Pokemon cards so much? This just made so much sense to me. I always felt like I was reconnecting with a piece of my childhood, and it gave me a lot of comfort. But to her, it was like, well, I say this makes Phil happy, but I just kind of don't get it. Like, I know I've been pretty honest with a lot of you throughout this video, right? And as I've mentioned before, it's because I don't really care about having fans on this channel. I actually view all my audience just as my friends, and I really put a lot of trust in my audience just to be open with all of you, because the reality is I've experienced life's inevitable ups and downs, and I just feel like people who watch my channel just want to experience the kind of real person I am, which is me. And I really do have plans to do this YouTube game for a long time, and it's just much easier for me to be myself on this platform rather than trying to fit into an image of what people expect like a pokey YouTuber to be, right? And honestly, if you do really enjoy these open discussions, definitely feel free to subscribe to the channel. I'd really love to have you on board. I cover a lot of like topics around Pokemon collecting, Pokemon investing, and I just try to have a good vibe on the channel. So definitely feel free to join. However, as I was saying, a lot of the time when we collect, it's because it gives us comfort. Though I think another aspect we need to look into is the fulfillment it provides and what goal setting does for the human spirit. So when we collect Pokemon cards, right, or collectibles, they are essentially goal-driven tasks. A lot of people who collect Pokemon make it more than just buying one card. they set goals for themselves, and then this ties into Pokemon collecting and also accomplishment. So when we collect Pokemon cards, right, it's common to make collecting goals. Now, if you're collecting today, there's literally hundreds of resources out there to track how you collect. You can use apps, and a lot of people even provide completely free spreadsheets of master sets, which allows collectors to check it off so they have every version and every variation of the card. You know, some people even love checking off ETB booklets and the like, right? And the point is, collecting is a very goal-driven task. You'll see it all the time, right? Like, oh, I'm only a few cards away from finishing my master set. Or you'll even see some people try collect a certain chase card and try to get it in every language that it's available. Or some master set collectors even like going for Grandmaster sets, which is when you collect all the promos and all the obscure cards from the set. This means purchasing the Pokemon Center stamped versions, or even the quirky ones like EB Game stamped promos. Though funnily enough, this actually taps into one of the fundamentals of goal setting and how humans are just naturally wired to be goal driven, right? That's why when we play a video game, most video game developers know this, and that's why they showcase you progress, and they have very strong visual cues to showcase you leveling up or anything like that. And do you know why they do this? By visually showcasing skill trees and your EXP moving up, we begin getting more invested, and humans love growth. So the author of the book Atomic Habits, James Clear, really covers this in great detail, right? A really great takeaway from the book: when we want to implement a habit, right? A great way to reinforce and confirm the habit is by having a whiteboard and crossing off each day you're successful. The simple act of just tracking and seeing progress is a huge motivator. And that's why collecting Pokemon cards reinforces this for us and adds to the reason why we love collecting Pokemon cards. Nearly every collector that I know or that I speak to has some form of a collecting goal. I mean, even in my channel's Discord, you'll see so many conversations about people's unique collection goals. And if you do have some time, definitely feel free to join the Discord. It's an amazing space with a lot of people from the Pokemon TCG community. You can find the server invite within the video's description. However, my point being is, right, collecting Pokemon cards becomes more than just owning a rare card, and it even becomes more than the value of seeing some of your collectibles appreciate over time. It does this weird thing where it really fulfills us because we have clear objectives. I know so many master set collectors who like to track their progress by adding percentages next to each set in their spreadsheet as they collect. So like they'll say, oh yeah, my master set's like 96% completed. I mean, it's like a simple way to stay motivated, seeing how close they are to actually finishing it. Though I do think if you're trying to go for these kind of huge goals, sometimes it's best to have smaller goals that are not so expensive. For example, if you do want the same kind of fulfillment, I'd actually just recommend trying to complete a Pokedex in like Scarlet and Violet or Sword and Shield. I mean, that's still going to take you around 250 hours, but it will provide the same level of fulfillment and it won't cost you $2,000. If you do like those big goals and you do decide to go for a master set, which is an awesome goal, keep in mind that buying the chase cards is always the better option once you've opened a few packs yourself. I mean, for example, if we just look at Surging Sparks right now, the chance to pull the top chase card, which is the SIR Pikachu, is around 1 in 960 packs. Meaning, if we follow the numbers accurately and you bought all your Surging Sparks at $4 a pack, statistically speaking, it would cost you $3,840 USD to hit the Pikachu SIR. I mean, I know some of you would be saying, oh, you might be hitting 2 or you might hit 3 Pikachus. And sure, it is likely you're going to pull a lot of expensive cards, but then you're going to be left with duplicates, and then you got to sell the cards, and you got to take the photos and list them. And honestly, it's not always that quick unless you do an auction. And then on top of that, whenever you do an auction, unless you have a very niche collectible with no competition, your auction will always sell for around 10 to 15% less than the available buy it now, because that's just how auctions work. Though one thing to keep in mind as well, right, is that Pokemon cards also can increase in price, which adds a whole other level to collecting. Because some of these really rare and high-priced Pokemon collectibles can be seen as investments, because if we look at history, they just usually slowly appreciate over time. But if you do take the time to learn about collectibles and you learn your Pokemon sets, which hopefully a lot of the viewers on this channel get to experience purchasing decent collectibles, right? Because that's what this channel focuses on. But that's why when purchasing Pokemon cards, right, I'm always very open that budgeting is the most important aspect, as I believe every collector can actually acquire some of these high-priced collectibles. However, they need to be patient and set very clear goals. And you can actually explore that topic within this video here. Within this video that's appearing on screen, I look over that topic and I speak about how to collect on a budget. Click the video that's appearing on screen and I'll see you there.